The still room beneath Frostmere Castle smelled of rosemary and regret. Alara Winters had learned to find comfort in the familiar rhythm of grinding herbs. Mortar against pestle. The soft crush of dried lavender releasing its scent into air borne thick with memories she tried not to examine too closely. 24 years of life in this small stone chamber was the only place she had ever truly belonged. Outside these walls, the
You
other
shouldn't have
Omegas in
come
Lord
here.
Valdris's household
I
moved
had
through
to
the
see
world
you.
with
It's
an
too
invisible
dangerous.
thread connecting them to their destined partners. They described it as warmth blooming in their chests, a pull they could feel from across courtyards, through crowds, even in dreams. Alara felt nothing, had felt nothing her entire life. The silence where a bond should exist was absolute, complete, like a sense she had been born without, a color she would never see, a song she could never hear no matter how hard she strained. Her father's last words, spoken 14 years ago as fever from the rogue attack consumed him, had explained why. Defective. The word had burrowed into her bones and made a home there. Some nights, when the castle was quiet and the moon hung full and silver outside her window, Alara could still hear her father's voice, rough with disappointment, heavy with the knowledge that his daughter would never be worthy of the one thing that defined their kind. True love. She crushed another handful of time between her fingers, watching the dried leaves crumble into powder. The motion was soothing, predictable, safe. The door to the still room opened without warning. Alara's hands stilled. Demon stood in the doorway, backlit by torchlight from the corridor. Her brother, 6 years older, taller, broader. A beta who had clawed his way up through Lord Valdris's ranks through ambition and careful cultivation of the right alliances. He had raised her after their parents died. For that, she owed him everything. "I need a favor," Demon said without preamble. His voice carried the casual authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I forgot my riding gloves in my chambers before leaving for patrol. Northwing, would you fetch them?" Alara set down her mortar carefully. Of course. Her brother's rooms were far from the servants' quarters where Alara slept. The North Wing belonged to Lord Valdris's trusted advisors, men of status and influence. Demon had earned his place there through 20 years of service. Alara should have been proud. Instead, climbing the stone stairs toward her brother's chambers, she felt only the familiar weight of inadequacy. Demon had succeeded despite sharing blood with someone fundamentally broken. The least she could do was fetch his gloves. The chambers were empty, neat, sparse in the way of men who traveled light and kept few personal possessions. Alara checked the trunk at the foot of the bed first. No gloves. Then the wardrobe. Nothing. The writing desk by the window was her last option. She found the gloves tucked beneath a stack of parchment covered in cipher. Her hand closed around soft leather, but her eyes caught fragments of decoded text in the margins. Words that made her blood turn cold. Usurp. Poison. Lord Valdris's sister in Millbrook. Alara's first instinct was denial. She read the letters 3 times, searching for some other interpretation. Some context that would make the words mean something innocent. But the meaning was unmistakable. Her brother was planning to kill their alpha. Demon had been corresponding with Lord Marcus, Valdris's exiled cousin, a disgraced beta who had been cast out 2 years prior for stealing from the Pax coffers. Together, they were plotting to poison Lord Valdris at the upcoming harvest feast. The event was only 4 days away. They would blame his death on rival Pax. Demon would step forward as the natural successor, having already secured the loyalty of key guards and advisors through bribes and blackmail. The letters were meticulous, detailed. They spoke of a larger plan, territories beyond Frostmere, that would fall in coordinated strikes once Valdris was gone. Alara left the letters exactly as she found them, fled to her still room with her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She spent the rest of the day grinding herbs she did not need, trying to decide what to do. Demon was her brother, her only family, the man who had given her a place in this castle when no one else would have her. But Lord Valdris was their alpha, and treason was treason regardless of blood. By evening, she had made her choice. She would go to Lord Valdris directly. Show him the letters. It would destroy Demon. But better one traitor fall than an entire pack suffer under false leadership built on murder. Except Vera was waiting in the corridor when Alara left the still room that night. Vera Vale, cousin on her mother's side. A woman whose beauty was matched only by her talent for twisting words until truth and lies became indistinguishable. She had flame-red hair that caught torchlight like living fire, and green eyes that could look innocent or calculating depending on her audience. Alara had never trusted her, but she had not realized until that moment how deeply Vera was entangled in Damon's schemes. Going somewhere? Vera stepped out from the shadows near the servants' stairwell. Her smile was all teeth. Ilara's throat went dry. Just to bed. Funny. Vera tilted her head. The gesture was almost playful. Almost. You look like someone heading toward the Alpha's study. There was no point in lying. Shifters could smell deception the way humans smelled smoke. That's between me and the Alpha. Wanted it? Vera moved closer. Her scent was sharp with amusement. Or is it about letters you found in a place you shouldn't have been? The world tilted sideways. Of course, Damon would have told his lover where he kept his correspondence. And Vera would have been watching to see if anyone discovered them. I won't let him do this, Alara said quietly. I won't let Damon kill Lord Valdres. Vera's smile widened. How noble, how utterly predictable. She leaned in close, voice dropping to a whisper. Go ahead, little cousin, go tell the Alpha about your wicked brother's plans. But know this, Damon will deny everything. And I will tell Lord Valdres that you have been stealing from his stores to sell herbs in the village, that you have been sneaking out at night to meet with rogues, that you are the one planning his death because you are bitter about being defective and unwanted. Alara's hands curled into fists. No one will believe you. Everyone will believe me, Vera corrected. I am a full shifter from a respectable bloodline. You are a broken Omega who cannot even feel a mate bond. Who do you think our Alpha will trust? The words landed like physical blows. Because Vera was right. When Alara tried to warn Lord Valdres the next morning, claiming she had overheard suspicious conversations, Vera was there to twist every word. By afternoon, guards were dragging Alara to the cells while Vera wept false tears and Damon looked on with manufactured shock. The trial was a mockery. Lord Valdres sat in judgment while Damon testified that his sister had always been jealous of his success, that her inability to bond had made her resentful and unstable. Other servants, clearly intimidated, confirmed they had seen Alara acting strangely in recent weeks. Vera produced a vial of wolfsbane she claimed to have found in Alara's still room. Alara knew with absolute certainty it had been planted. Through it all, Alara remained silent. What defense could she offer? The truth sounded absurd even to her own ears. A defective Omega accusing her successful brother of treason. A woman with no status claiming conspiracy against a trusted advisor. When Lord Valdres collapsed at dinner that evening, frothing at the mouth while Damon shouted for healers and Vectra screamed about the traitorous Omega, Alara's fate was sealed. Lord Valdres died before midnight. By dawn, Alara was sentenced to death by fire. They dragged her to the North Tower in chains, the highest point of Frostmere Castle, a crumbling stone structure used only for executions and storage. The chamber at the top was small and cold, with a single narrow window that looked out over the forest. Iron manacles bolted to the wall held Alara's wrists above her head. Forcing her to stand, the guards left without speaking. She did not weep. There seemed little point. Instead, she stared through the window at the darkening sky and thought about her father's final words. Perhaps he had been right all along. Perhaps she had never been meant for anything better than this. Hours passed, the moon rose full in silver. Alara felt its pull the way all shifters did, but where others would have felt the call to shift, to run wild beneath that light, she felt only emptiness. Always emptiness. Footsteps on the stairs made her tense. Too soon, she thought. They were supposed to wait until dawn. But when the door opened, it was Damon who stepped through. Her brother looked older than his 30 years. Gray threaded his temples that had not been there a month ago. New lines bracketed his mouth. He closed the door behind him and stood there, studying her with an expression she could not read. You should have minded your own business, he said finally. Alara's laugh came out bitter, broken. You're going to lecture me about minding my business? You murdered our Alpha. I did what was necessary. Damon crossed his arms. Lord Valdres was weak. He was leading this pack to ruin with his soft policies and his refusal to expand our territory. We needed strong leadership. You needed power. Is that so wrong? Her brother's voice rose. I have worked for 20 years to earn respect in this pack. 20 years of watching lesser men advance while I remained a simple beta. And you with your defect in your herbs, you would have destroyed everything I built. You destroyed yourself, Alara said, and you'll be found out eventually. Someone will notice the pattern. Someone will ask questions. Damon shook his head slowly. No one will question the new Alpha, especially not after your execution proves how seriously I take justice. He turned toward the door, paused. For what it's worth, sister, I'm sorry it came to this, but you gave me no choice. He left. Alara heard a bar slide into place on the outside of the door, locked in as if the chains were not imprisonment enough. More time passed. Alara's arms ached from being held above her head. Thirst made her tongue thick in her mouth. She drifted in and out of consciousness, dreaming of running through forests she would never see again. The smell of smoke woke her. It was still dark outside, hours until dawn, but gray tendrils were seeping through the gap under the door, carrying the acrid scent of burning wood and pitch. Alara's heart kicked into a desperate rhythm. "Help!" Her voice came out as a rasp. She tried again, louder. "Fire! Someone help!" No one came. The smoke thickened, stinging her eyes and filling her lungs with each breath. Below, she could hear the roar and crackle of flames consuming the tower's lower levels. Demon had not been willing to wait until morning after all. He wanted her dead now, before anyone could ask inconvenient questions. The heat rose rapidly. Sweat poured down Alara's face and soaked through her thin dress. She pulled against the manacles until her wrists bled, but the iron held firm. The smoke was so thick now she could barely see the window 3 paces away. "This is how I die," she thought with strange clarity. "Alone and forgotten, just as Father said I would be." Somewhere far below, in the forest beyond Frostmere Castle, an Alpha King felt his wolf surge to the surface for no reason he could name. The animal clawed at Kale Shadowcrest's control, howling with an urgency that bordered on madness. Something was burning. Something precious. Something his. Kale spurred his horse toward the castle gates, toward the smoke rising against the moon, toward a fate he did not yet understand. The smoke had stolen Alara's consciousness when the door exploded inward. She did not see the Alpha King climb the burning staircase, did not feel the heat that should have driven any sane man back, did not hear him shout commands to men below, or smell the fury rolling off him in waves. All she knew was darkness and the distant sensation of falling. Then hands, large and impossibly gentle, at her wrists, the manacles shattered with a sound like breaking bells. Alara's arms dropped to her sides, useless and numb. Someone lifted her against a broad chest. The movement jarred her back to partial awareness, though her eyes would not open. "You're mine to save." A voice rumbled above her, deep and absolute. Alara tried to speak, to ask who was carrying her and why, but her throat was raw from smoke, and no sound emerged. She felt motion, rapid and sure-footed despite the heat and the groaning of timber. Fresh air hit her face suddenly, blessed and cold. Then there were more voices, urgent and overlapping. "Your Majesty, the structure is collapsing. Get back, all of you. Now, Cito." "Sire, the prisoner is under my protection. Anyone who questions that can face me and challenge." The words filtered through Alara's consciousness like light through deep water. "Your Majesty, sire." An Alpha King was holding her. Why would an Alpha King be anywhere near Frostmere Castle, let alone carrying a condemned Omega from a burning tower? Darkness pulled her under again before she could make sense of it. Alara did not truly wake the next morning. She surfaced in broken pieces, pain in her raw throat, the sting of smoke in her lungs, the strange sensation of cool cloth against her wrists where the manacles had been. Voices came and went around her like waves. Hands lifted her head and coaxed spoonfuls of honeyed water past cracked lips. Healing magic pressed against her chest, trying to soothe lungs that had been scraped bare by fire. Each time she fought her way up toward consciousness, exhaustion dragged her back down. On the 3rd day, Alara finally woke all the way. She was in a bed softer than any she had slept in since childhood. Her wrists were bandaged, her throat ached, but she was alive. That realization brought no relief, only confusion. Morning light streamed through tall windows. A woman sat in a chair near the door, dark-haired and watchful. She wore the practical leathers of a warrior, and a sword rested across her knees. "You're awake," the woman observed. "How do you feel?" Alara's voice emerged as a whisper. "Where am I?" "Frostmere Castle. Guest wing." The woman set her sword aside and rose, moving to pour water from a pitcher. "I'm Lyra. I serve King Kale Shadowcrest." The name sparked recognition. Kale Shadowcrest, the Alpha King who ruled all the packs in the Northern Territories. Alara had never seen him, but everyone knew his name. He was said to be ruthless in battle and fair in judgment, a king who had unified fractious packs through strength and strategy. Lyra brought the cup to Alara's lips and helped her drink. The water soothed her raw throat marginally. "Why am I here?" Alara managed. "The king will explain. Rest. He'll come when he's finished with the interrogations." Interrogations, the word sent ice through Alara's veins. She was a condemned traitor. Of course there would be interrogations. This was simply a delay before her execution, a chance for the Alpha King to extract information about Lord Valdris's death before she burned. The door opened hours later. Kale Shadowcrest entered alone. Alara had expected someone imposing, but the reality still stole her breath. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with black hair and a neatly trimmed beard that framed a strong jaw. His eyes were amber, the color of honey held to sunlight. They fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to look away. A scar cut through his left jawline, pale against his skin. He wore simple traveling clothes, but there was no mistaking the power in the way he moved. "Leave us," he said to Lyra without taking his eyes off Alara. The warrior departed, closing the door behind her. Kale crossed the room and sat in the chair Lyra had vacated. For a long moment, he simply looked at Alara. She forced herself to meet his gaze, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "You're afraid," he said finally. It was not a question, but Alara answered anyway. "Shouldn't I be?" "Not of me." He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "Do you know why I pulled you from that tower? To question me before my execution." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or frustration. "I pulled you from the tower because the moment I touched you, I felt the mate bond snap into place." Alara stared at him. Of all the explanations she had imagined, that one had not occurred to her. It was absurd, impossible. She was defective. She could not be anyone's mate, least of all an Alpha King's. "You're lying," she said. Kale's jaw tightened. "I am many things, but I am not a liar." "Then you're mistaken. I don't feel mate bonds. I never have. It's a defect I was born with." "I know what I felt." His voice was quiet but absolute. "The bond is real. For you, maybe." Alara's laugh came out bitter. "But I feel nothing. So either you're lying about the bond to manipulate me for some political reason, or you've convinced yourself of something that isn't there." She watched his hands curl into fists, watched the muscle in his jaw jump. He was angry, she realized. Actually angry. Good, let him be angry. Let him realize she was not worth whatever game he was playing. "I spent 3 days investigating what happened here," Kale said, his tone carefully controlled. "During the 3 days you were unconscious. Your brother Damon conspired with Lord Valdris's exiled cousin to poison your alpha. They planned to blame rival packs and install Damon as the new leader. You discovered their plot and tried to warn Lord Valdris. Your cousin Vera, who is Damon's lover, intercepted and framed you for the very crime your brother committed." Alara's breath caught. "How do you—" "Damon kept detailed records. Foolish for a conspirator, but fortunate for uncovering truth." Kale stood and began pacing. "I found the correspondence hidden in his chambers. I questioned the servants who testified against you. Under honest interrogation, they admitted to being threatened and bribed. Vera tried to flee this morning but was caught at the border." Hope, dangerous and unwanted, flickered in Alara's chest. "Then you know I'm innocent." "Yes." "Will you release me?" Kale stopped pacing and turned to face her fully. "I already have. You were never truly my prisoner." He paused. "But there is still the matter of your brother and cousin. They committed high treason and murder. The penalty is death." The hope guttered out. "When will you execute them?" "This afternoon. In the courtyard, it will be public as the law requires." He watched her carefully. "You may attend if you wish, or you may remain here." Alara pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "He's my brother, my only family. He tried to burn you alive." "I know." Her voice cracked despite her efforts to keep it steady. "I know what he did. I know what he is. But he's still my brother. And after today, I'll have no one left in the world." Something in Kale's expression softened slightly. "You have me." "I don't want you." The words came out sharper than she intended. "I don't know you. And this bond you claim to feel means nothing to me because I can't feel it. You're a stranger who happened to arrive at a convenient moment." For several heartbeats, Kale said nothing. Then he moved to the door. "The executions are at midday. I'll have Lyra escort you if you choose to attend." He left without waiting for a response. Alara sat in that luxurious room and shook. Not from cold or fear, but from the weight of too many emotions crashing against each other. Relief that the truth was known. Grief for the brother who had never truly loved her. Confusion about the Alpha King who claimed she was his mate. And underneath it all, a terrible creeping loneliness that threatened to swallow her whole. She attended the execution. The courtyard was crowded with pack members, all come to witness justice. Alara stood near the back with Lyra at her side, watching as guards led Damon and Vera to the platform. Her brother's face was blank, carefully empty. Vera wept and begged for mercy. Kael read the charges in a voice that carried across the courtyard. Treason, murder, conspiracy. Each word fell like a hammer. When he asked if they had any final words, Damon looked directly at Alara. I did it for us, he said. For our family. Lord Valdris would have cast you out eventually. You know he would have. I was trying to secure our place here. Alara said nothing. There was nothing to say. Damon had always been skilled at justifying his choices, at making cruelty sound like strategy. The executioner's blade fell twice, quick and clean. Alara did not look away, though part of her wanted to. She owed Damon that much at least, to witness the end of the life they had shared. When it was over, the crowd dispersed. Alara remained frozen in place, staring at the empty platform. Come, Lyra said gently. There's no purpose in staying here. Alara let herself be led back to the guest chambers. She climbed into bed, fully clothed, and pulled the blankets over her head. Lyra said something about food and rest, but Alara heard none of it. She did not emerge for 2 days. Servants brought meals that went uneaten. Lyra checked on her regularly but did not force conversation. Once, Alara thought she heard Kael's voice in the corridor outside, low and concerned, but he did not enter. On the third morning, Alara finally rose. She bathed and dressed in the simple gown someone had left for her. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She had no tears left to shed. Kael was waiting in the sitting room when she emerged. He stood when he saw her, his amber eyes searching her face. I don't know whether to thank you or hate you, Alara said before he could speak. You saved my life, but you also took the last person in the world who was tied to me by blood. He took himself, Kael corrected quietly. I simply enacted justice. I know. Alara wrapped her arms around herself. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, Kael agreed. It wouldn't. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Kael said, I'm returning to Ironmore Keep tomorrow. You're coming with me. Alara's head snapped up. I'm not. You are. His tone left no room for argument. Demon had allies, people who helped him consolidate power. When they learn of his death and your survival, they may seek revenge. You're not safe here. I've lived in danger my entire life. I'll manage. Not this time. Kael moved closer, though he maintained careful distance. You are my mate. Whether you feel the bond or not, that makes you my responsibility. And I do not leave my people unprotected. I'm not your people. I'm not your anything. But even as Alara said it, she knew the argument was futile. Kael Shadowcrest was an Alphaking. When he decided something, it became reality. Pack your belongings, he said not unkindly. We leave at dawn. Ironmore Keep rose from the northern mountains like a crown of stone and timber. Alara saw it first from the ridge above the valley, and her breath caught despite herself. This was not just a castle. This was the seat of an empire, 3 times the size of Frostmere. Walls thick as ancient trees, towers that pierced the clouds. The journey had taken 5 days. Kael had ridden ahead with his advance guard, leaving Alara to travel in a covered wagon with Lyra and Corvin Greymore, the king's chief advisor. Corvin was a thin man with silver threading his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He had spent most of the journey reading reports and occasionally asking Alara polite questions about her knowledge of medicinal herbs. Lyra had been less talkative but more reassuring in her silence. She treated Alara neither with pity nor judgment, simply as a person who needed protecting. It was the most comfortable Alara had felt around anyone in years. Now, as they descended into the valley and approached the massive gates, Alara's stomach twisted with dread. She was about to enter a court full of powerful shifters who would see her as nothing more than a defective Omega playing at being their future queen. The gates opened to reveal a courtyard swarming with activity. Servants rushed to unload wagons. Guards stood at attention. And everywhere, shifters stopped what they were doing to stare as Kael dismounted and moved to help Alara down from her wagon. She did not need his help, but refusing would have caused a scene. His hands closed around her waist, warm and steady. He lifted her down as though she weighed nothing. The moment her feet touched the ground, whispers erupted across the courtyard like wildfire. Is that her? The Omega from Frostmere. She looks so ordinary. How can she be his mate? Kael's voice cut through the murmuring without him raising it. Enough! The courtyard fell silent instantly. He offered Alara his arm. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. They climbed the wide steps to the main hall, where more people waited. Nobles in fine clothing, warriors in ceremonial armor, servants in crisp livery. all of them watching, all of them judging. Kale led her to the center of the hall and turned to face the assembled crowd. This is Alara Winters. She is my mate, and she will be treated with the respect due to your future queen. Anyone who questions this will answer to me directly. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken objections. Then a woman stepped forward from the cluster of nobles. She was tall and striking, with copper hair braided in an intricate crown and eyes the color of jade. She wore emerald silk that complemented her coloring perfectly, and her posture radiated confidence born of privilege. Your Majesty, she said, her voice smooth as honey, we are honored by your return, but surely you understand our concern. An Omega who cannot feel mate bonds is unprecedented as a future Luna. How can she fulfill her duties if she cannot sense the pack's needs? Kale's hand tightened slightly on Alara's. Lady Morgana, always so quick to voice concerns that are not yours to raise. Morgana's smile did not waver. I speak only out of loyalty to the crown and concern for pack stability. Your concern is noted and dismissed. Kale turned his attention to the broader crowd. Alara will have chambers in the royal wing. Lyra will remain her personal guard. Anyone requiring audience with her will go through proper channels, that is all. He did not wait for responses, simply guided Alara towards a side corridor. Behind them, the murmuring resumed immediately, louder now, less cautious. Alara's chambers were palatial, a sitting room with cushioned furniture and a fireplace large enough to stand in, a bedroom with a canopy bed draped in midnight blue silk, a private bathing room with a copper tub. Windows overlooked gardens where late autumn flowers still bloomed. It's too much, Alara said once they were alone. It's adequate. Kale moved to the windows and checked the latches. Lyra will sleep in the adjoining guard room. Corvin is 2 doors down if you need anything. I'm in the chambers at the end of this hall. How convenient for you. He turned from the window, his amber eyes searching her face. I'm not going to force myself on you, if that's your concern. These chambers have locks. You're free to use them. Shame heated Alara's cheeks. I didn't mean, yes, you did, and I don't blame you for the assumption. Kale moved toward the door. Dinner is served in the great hall at sunset. You are not required to attend tonight if you'd prefer to rest. He left before she could formulate a response. Alara stood alone in the center of her palatial prison and wondered who she was supposed to become. The first week at Ironmore Keep passed in a blur of lessons that felt like small battles Alara was losing. Mornings belonged to Corvin. He arrived at her chambers precisely at dawn, carrying texts that smelled of age and authority, pack hierarchies, territorial disputes, trade agreements that had prevented wars and marriages that had started them. He quizzed her ruthlessly until she could recite bloodlines in her sleep. Knowledge is armor, he told her during one particularly exhausting session. His gray eyes were kind but unyielding. Physical strength matters, but a sharp mind can end conflicts before they begin. Afternoons belonged to Lyra. The warrior led Alara to the training yard where soldiers practiced with swords and bare hands. The first time Alara picked up a practice blade, it felt foreign in her grip. Heavy, dangerous, like holding something that belonged to someone else. Lyra corrected her stance with patient efficiency. Again, your weight is all wrong. If someone hits you from the side, you'll fall. Alara fell 17 times that first day. By the end of the week, she fell only 12 times. Progress, Lyra said. But Alara felt every bruise like evidence of inadequacy. Evenings belonged to Margot, a stern woman with silver hair pulled back so tight it seemed to hurt. She taught etiquette with the same intensity others reserved for warfare. How to hold a wine glass, which fork to use for which course, the proper way to address a visiting alpha without accidentally issuing a challenge. Through it all, Kale maintained careful distance. He appeared at dinners in the Great Hall, always polite and attentive, but never presumptuous. He asked after her progress in lessons, but did not press for details about her feelings. He pulled out her chair and ensured no one sat too close or spoke too boldly. It should have been a relief, this respectful space he gave her. Instead, it left Alara feeling oddly hollow, as though she were living in a beautiful painting where nothing was quite real. The court made their opinions abundantly clear. Nobles found excuses to visit the royal wing, assessing Alara with barely concealed disdain. Servants whispered just loud enough for her to overhear. Even the guards seemed uncertain whether to treat her with respect or pity. Lady Morgana was the worst. She attended every function Alara did, always impeccably dressed and surrounded by admirers. She never said anything overtly cruel, but her comments carried barbs wrapped in silk. Such a charming gown, my lady. Very rustic. You must find court life overwhelming, coming from such a small household. It's remarkable how well you're adapting, considering your condition. Alara learned to smile blandly and say nothing. Engaging would only give Morgana more ammunition. But the woman's attention felt like something predatory. A cat watching a mouse and waiting for the right moment to pounce. 3 weeks after Alara's arrival, Morgana hosted a tea party in the garden pavilion. The invitation arrived on cream parchment with Alara's name written in elegant script. Lyra advised against attending, but Corvin shook his head. Refusing would be seen as weakness or fear. You must go, but remember every word you speak will be repeated and analyzed. The pavilion was beautiful. White stone columns draped in late autumn roses. Tables set with fine china. A dozen noble ladies already seated when Alara arrived, their conversations falling silent as she approached. Morgana rose to greet her, wearing a gown the color of deep wine. Her smile was warm. Her eyes were not. Lady Alara, how wonderful you could join us. She gestured to an empty seat. Please. We were just discussing the upcoming winter solstice celebration. Alara sat, accepted tea she did not want, listened to conversations about fashion and gossip and the tiresome behavior of husbands. Then Morgana turned to her with that perfect smile. Tell me, Lady Alara, at Frostmere, did you have responsibilities beyond the still room? I imagine your days were quite simple. The other women leaned in slightly. Waiting. Alara set down her cup carefully. I managed Lord Valdris's medicinal stores, treated injuries among the staff, assisted the healers during difficult births and illnesses. Simple work, perhaps, but necessary. Of course, Morgana's tone dripped sympathy. How fortunate that you found purpose, despite your limitations. Not every Omega with your particular challenge would have been so resourceful. There it was, the knife sliding between ribs with a smile. Alara met Morgana's gaze steadily. I've found that limitations often teach us more than advantages. They force us to become creative, resilient, strong in ways that those born to privilege might never understand. Something flickered in Morgana's eyes, surprise perhaps, or recognition that Alara would not be as easy to break as she had assumed. The tea party continued without further incident, but when Alara left, she felt Morgana's gaze on her back like a target being painted. The banquet celebrating Kael's birthday fell on the first day of the 4th week. Lyra helped Alara into a gown of deep sapphire that brought out the blue in her eyes. The fabric was heavier than anything she had worn before, embroidered with silver thread that caught the light. Lyra pinned her dark hair into an elaborate style Alara would never have managed alone. You look like a queen, Lyra said approvingly. Alara studied her reflection and saw a stranger playing dress-up. I looked terrified. Same thing sometimes. The great hall had been transformed for the occasion. Tables groaned under platters of roasted meat and fresh bread. Musicians played in the gallery. Nobles clustered in groups, their laughter too loud and their smiles too sharp. Kael sat at the head table on a carved throne. An empty seat waited beside him. Alara's seat, her place as his mate, whether she wanted it or not. She made her way to the dais, acutely aware of every eye following her progress. Kael stood when she approached, a gesture of respect that made several nobles shift uncomfortably. He pulled out her chair himself. You look beautiful, he said quietly. I looked terrified. The corner of his mouth quirked. That too, but mostly beautiful. The meal proceeded with agonizing slowness. Alara picked at her food while nobles approached to offer birthday wishes to Kael and assess her with sidelong glances. She was beginning to think she might survive the evening when Morgana rose from her seat at a lower table. Your Majesty? Her voice carried across the hall, cutting through conversations. If I may be so bold, I would like to propose a toast. Kael's expression remained neutral, but Alara felt him tense beside her. Proceed. Morgana raised her goblet. Servants hurried to ensure everyone else's cups were full. To our great king who has led us with wisdom and strength. Morgana's smile was radiant. Perfect. And to his chosen mate, Lady Alara, who has shown such courage in adapting to court life despite her unique challenges. The words sounded complimentary, but the emphasis on unique challenges made Alara's hands curl into fists beneath the table. Morgana was not finished. Of course, we all have concerns about how a Luna who cannot sense the mate bond will fulfill her traditional duties. But I'm certain His Majesty has considered these complications thoroughly. The hall had gone silent. Everyone waited to see how Kael would respond. He stood slowly, his chair scraped against stone. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but absolutely lethal. Lady Morgana, you will sit down, or you will leave my hall and not return. Morgana's smile faltered. I meant no offense, Your Majesty. I was simply questioning my judgment. undermining my mate, creating division in my court. Kale descended from the dais. Nobles scrambled to move from his path. Do you think I don't see what you're doing? Do you imagine yourself so clever that I cannot recognize ambition wrapped in false concern? Your Majesty, I only want what's best for the pack. What's best for the pack is for you to remember your place. Kyle stopped directly in front of Morgana. He was a head taller, and the fury rolling off him made Alara's own wolf instincts scream at her to submit, even from across the room. Ilara is my mate. She will be your Luna. And if I hear you or anyone else question her fitness again, I will personally remind you why I am king. Morgana's face had gone pale. She sank into a curtsy, her hands shaking. Of course, Your Majesty. Forgive me. Kale returned to the dais without another word. The meal resumed in uncomfortable silence. Later, when the festivities had ended and most guests had departed, Alara found herself unable to sleep. She walked through the gardens, needing air and space and distance from the stifling weight of courtly expectations. She found Kyle beneath an ancient oak, staring up at the stars. You didn't have to do that, she said. He turned, unsurprised by her presence. Yes, I did. Now they'll all think I'm weak, that I need you to fight my battles. They'll think I won't tolerate disrespect toward my mate. There's a difference. Kale moved closer, close enough that Alara could see the exhaustion in his eyes. I know you don't feel the bond. I know you think I'm forcing this situation on you for political reasons. But you need to understand something. What? I spent years watching other alphas find their mates. Years of wondering if mine even existed, or if I was destined to rule alone. His voice dropped lower. When I felt the bond snap into place in that tower, it was like every empty space in my life suddenly made sense. You are my mate, Alara, and I don't care if you never feel it. I would choose you anyway. Alara's breath caught. This was not the careful distance he had maintained for weeks. This was raw vulnerability from a man who did not show weakness. Why, she whispered. I'm nobody, I'm defective. I can't give you what other mates could. You're not defective, you're just hurt. Kale lifted his hand, then dropped it before touching her. And as for what you can give me, your presence, your conversation, your terrible habit of questioning everything I say, that's more than most queens would offer. Before Alara could respond, Lyra's voice cut through the darkness. Your Majesty, Lady Alara, inside. Now. They ran. Guards were already converging on Alara's chambers when they arrived. The door hung open, splintered at the hinges. Inside, furniture was overturned and tapestries torn from walls. 3 bodies lay in spreading pools of blood, their throats cut, their faces twisted in final agony. Assassins, Corvin said. He was already examining the corpses, dead before we arrived. No identification on any of them. Kale's hand had gone to his sword. How did they get past the guards? Someone let them in. Lyra's voice was grim. This was planned. Alara stared at the bodies and felt her world tilt sideways. Someone wanted her dead. Someone in this very castle had hired killers to eliminate the king's inconvenient mate. Was anything taken? Kale demanded. Corvin searched the rooms quickly. Nothing. They were here to kill, not steal. Morgana, Alara said. The name felt like ash in her mouth. It has to be her, after what happened tonight. We have no proof, Corvin interrupted. And without proof, we cannot accuse a high-ranking noble. Kale's jaw clenched so hard Alara could hear his teeth grind. Double the guards. No one enters or leaves the royal wing without being cleared by Lyra personally. And find out who was on duty tonight. I want names. They found names. They found gaps in the watch rotation. A servant's corridor that should have been sealed after nightfall. A guard who swore he had never left his post, but had a purse of fresh coin hidden under his mattress. But coin was not proof, and fear made men lie. Whoever had ordered the attack had not done it with their own hands. The trail was designed to die in the dark long before it reached a noble's doorstep. Corvin said it plainly when KL demanded arrests. If we move without evidence that can be presented before the council, we give our enemy what they want. A martyr, a faction war, a court that fractures while the borders burn. We watch, we gather, then we cut out the rot in one clean stroke. Kale pulled Allura against his chest before she realized what he was doing. She stiffened, then slowly relaxed into the embrace. He was warm and solid. For the first time since arriving at Ironmore Keep, she felt almost safe. I won't let them hurt you, he murmured into her hair. I swear it. Alara closed her eyes and let herself believe him, if only for a moment. 2 days later, the council convened for the first time since Alara's arrival. She sat in a chair beside Kihil's throne, trying to look confident while her stomach churned. 12 Alpha nobles occupied the council table, along with Corvin and 3 military commanders. The meeting proceeded with discussions of border patrols and grain supplies. Then Alpha Darius, a grizzled man with more scars than sense, cleared his throat pointedly. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but I must raise a concern that's been circulating among the packs." Kale's expression remained neutral. "Speak." "It's about Lady Alara." Darius's eyes flickered to her briefly. "There are questions about her suitability as future Luna, specifically her inability to sense the mate bond. How can she fulfill her duties to the pack if she cannot feel what connects her to her alpha?" The room went silent. Alara felt Kale tense beside her, sensed him preparing to defend her again. But she placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. "Alpha Darius," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "Tell me, what are the Luna's primary duties?" Darius frowned, clearly not expecting to be questioned. "To support the Alpha, to sense the pack's needs through the bond. And what else? To mediate disputes, to oversee household management and charitable works, to represent the crown at functions." Alara nodded. "So the Luna's duties include political acumen, organizational skills, diplomatic capabilities, and the ability to command respect. Only one of those requires supernatural ability. The rest require intelligence, training, and determination, and all of which I possess or am actively developing." She leaned forward slightly. "The bond is one tool among many, not the foundation. Tell me, Alpha Darius, if you lost your sense of smell tomorrow, would you stop being an alpha? Would you suddenly be incapable of leading your pack?" "That's different, is it? You rely on scent to identify pack members and detect threats. It's an important sense. But if you lost it, you would adapt. You would use your other senses, your intelligence, your experience. That's what I'm doing." Alara paused. "And frankly, suggesting that I'm unfit for a role because of one missing sense implies that all the other requirements for Luna are meaningless, which seems insulting to every queen who came before me." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Corvin was smiling slightly. Kale's hand found hers under the table and squeezed. Alpha Darius opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded slowly. "A fair point, my lady. Well argued." The meeting continued without further challenges. When it ended, Kale walked Alara back to her chambers. "That was impressive," he said. "Corvin drilled me on potential objections for 2 hours yesterday." "Still impressive." He stopped outside her door. "You're becoming quite formidable, you know." "Good. Maybe people will stop trying to kill me." But people did not stop. They simply changed tactics. The rumors started subtly. Whispers that Alara had used some kind of dark magic to make Kyle believe in a false bond. Suggestions that she was actually a spy from Frostmere, planted to weaken the crown from within. Insinuations that her training with Lyra was really preparation for assassination. Alara heard the whispers everywhere, in corridors, in gardens, during meals. The servants stopped meeting her eyes. The nobles watched her with renewed suspicion. Even some of the guards seemed uncertain. It culminated 3 days later when Alpha Darius called another meeting. This time he suggested that Alara submit to examination by the royal healers to prove the mate bond existed. Kale refused immediately. "I will not subject my mate to invasive magical testing to satisfy baseless rumors." "With respect, Your Majesty," another noble interjected. "If the rumors are baseless, wouldn't proof silence them? The request itself is disrespectful." "I'll do it." Every head turned toward Alara. "If testing will end the speculation," she said, "I'll submit to it willingly." Kale looked at her sharply. "Alara, I'm tired of whispers and sideways glances. Let's settle this." The testing was scheduled for 3 days later. 2 healers, both powerful witches who served the crown, performed the examination in the great hall before the assembled court. They had Alara drink a potion that tasted like copper and ash. Then they placed their hands on either side of her head and chanted in words that made her bones vibrate. The magic burned through her like wildfire, searching for connections, for threads of fate woven between souls. Alara felt it find something deep inside her, felt it illuminate a bond she could not sense but that definitely existed. The healers gasped simultaneously. When they withdrew, the elder witch addressed the court. "The mate bond is present and powerful. It connects Lady Alara to His Majesty absolutely." She paused, her expression troubled. "However, the bond is blocked on Lady Alara's side, not absent, but buried beneath significant emotional trauma. It exists, but she cannot feel it. The court erupted in murmuring. Morgana's voice rose above the chaos. So the bond is functionally useless to her. How is that different from having no bond at all? It's different because it's real, Kale said coldly, and because trauma can be healed, unlike some people's poisonous ambitions. Morgana smiled thinly. I only seek clarity, Your Majesty. That night, Alara lay awake wondering if Kael was disappointed. The bond existed, which vindicated him, but she still could not feel it, which meant nothing had actually changed. She was still broken, still inadequate. The royal hunt was Morgana's idea, proposed as a way to celebrate the coming of winter. Kael agreed reluctantly. Alara insisted on participating despite Lyra's concerns. I'm not going to hide in the castle forever, Alara argued. People need to see me as capable. The hunt assembled at dawn 1 week after the examination. 30 nobles on horseback, servants driving game toward them through the forest. Ilara rode a gentle mare that Lyra had personally selected, wearing riding leathers and carrying a bow she barely knew how to use. Kael kept close to her for the first hour, but gradually the riders spread out as different groups pursued different prey. Ilara found herself separated from the main party with only 2 other nobles, both women she barely knew, Lady Sarah and Lady Marin. They were following a deer trail when Alara's saddle shifted violently. She grabbed for the mare's mane, but the saddle twisted completely sideways. She fell hard, hitting the ground with her shoulder first. Pain exploded through her collarbone and ribs. The mare bolted. The 2 noble women stared at Alara for a long moment. Then they exchanged glances and rode away without offering help. Alara tried to stand and nearly blacked out from the pain. Her collarbone was definitely broken. Something in her rib cage had cracked. She managed to prop herself against a tree and press her hand against her side, trying to keep pressure on what might be internal bleeding. She did not know how long she sat there before she heard hoofbeats approaching. Kael appeared through the trees, riding hard. Lyra and Corvin closed behind him. He was off his horse before it stopped moving, dropping to his knees beside her. What happened? Saddle. Alara's voice came out thready. It broke. Lyra was already examining the fallen tack. Cut. Someone sliced the leather almost through so it would fail under stress. Kael's face went absolutely blank, which Alara had learned meant he was furious beyond words. He lifted her with excruciating gentleness. She bit back a scream as the movement jarred her broken bones. I've got you, he murmured. Hold on. Alara pressed her face against his chest and held on while consciousness slipped away. The healers worked through the night. Alara drifted in and out of awareness, pain in Kael's hand gripping hers. Fragments of conversation. Words like internal bleeding and broken ribs, insignificant trauma. Someone was arguing about using alpha blood to speed healing. Someone else was saying it was too dangerous, that the risk of rejection was too high. Then Kael's voice, absolute and brooking no argument. Do it. Use mine. The ritual was old and rarely performed. Alpha blood carried immense healing properties, but introducing it to someone not of the alpha's direct bloodline could cause violent rejection. The body might attack the foreign blood as an invader, making the injuries worse instead of better. Alara felt the first drop touch her lips and tasted copper and lightning. Her body convulsed. Kael held her down while healers chanted, forcing the magic to take hold rather than destroy. The pain was worse than the fall, worse than anything she had experienced. She screamed until her voice broke. Then warmth flooded through her, knitting bones and closing internal wounds with a speed that should have been impossible. The pain receded slowly, replaced by exhaustion so complete she could barely keep her eyes open. Kael's face swam into view above her, haggard and gray with strain. Rest now, you're safe. She wanted to thank him, to tell him he should not have risked himself for her, but sleep dragged her under before the words could form. The fever came on the second day. Alara's temperature spiked dangerously high, despite every cooling spell the healers attempted. Her body was fighting the alpha blood even as it healed her, caught between acceptance and rejection. Kael refused to leave her side. He sat in a chair drawn close to her bed, changing cold compresses on her forehead and forcing water between her lips when she was conscious enough to swallow. On the 3rd day of fever, Alara slipped into dreams that felt more real than waking. She was 6 years old again, small and frightened, standing in her father's study while he paced and raged. Nothing? You feel nothing at all? Her father's voice echoed with disgust. Your mother felt the bond with me from across 3 territories. Your brother sensed his first potential mate at age 7, and you feel nothing. I'm sorry, Papa. Her child self was crying, not understanding what she had done wrong. I try, but there's just quiet. Defective. He spat the word like a curse. A child who cannot bond is worthless to this family. You will never find a mate. No alpha will want you. You are broken, Alara, and broken things serve no purpose. I can learn. I can be better. You cannot fix what is fundamentally wrong. But the dream shifted, went deeper. She was 4 years old now, smaller still. Her mother was alive, beautiful and kind, with dark hair like Alara's own. They were in the forest. Her mother was teaching her to identify healing herbs. Then the rogues came. Alara saw it through a child's eyes, her mother pushing her behind a tree, telling her to run, to hide. But Alara had been too scared to move, too small to understand the danger. Her mother had stayed, had fought the rogues to protect her daughter, had died buying time for help to arrive, and her father, arriving too late, had looked at Alara with such hatred. If you weren't born broken, your mother wouldn't have been distracted protecting you. She would have sensed them coming. She would have run. The trauma was not just about being defective. It was about being responsible for her mother's death, about deserving her father's hatred, about building walls so high and thick around her heart that even fate itself could not breach them. Alara woke on the fourth day with clarity she had not possessed in years. The fever had broken. Her body ached, but the sharp pain of broken bones was gone, replaced by the dull soreness of rapid healing. Kyle was asleep in the chair beside her bed, his head pillowed on his arms on the mattress near her hand. He looked exhausted, his beard overgrown, dark circles shadowing his eyes. She reached out and touched his hair gently. He woke instantly, his amber eyes finding hers. Alara. Her name came out rough with relief. How do you feel? Like I got trampled by horses, but alive. She managed a weak smile. You look terrible. You've been unconscious with fever for 3 days. I earned looking terrible. He sat up, wincing as his back protested the chair. The healers say the alpha blood took. You're healing properly now. Corvin slipped in before Alara could answer, carrying notes that looked as if he had slept on them. The tack was cut with a fine blade, he reported, clean enough to pass a quick glance, brutal enough to fail under a hard turn. The stable master swears no one touched it after inspection, but someone did. We're questioning every hand who worked the hunt and every noble who rode close enough to watch you fall. Alara's stomach turned. The 2 women who were with me, Lady Sarah and Lady Marin. Already questioned, Corvin said. They claimed they rode to fetch help. They did not. They went back to the party and said you had already been collected. Lyra pulled that lie apart in 3 questions. Kale stripped them of hunting privileges and barred them from court functions until the council decides further penalty. Kale added, his voice was low. Cowardice is a sin. Abandoning the king's mate is a statement. His hand tightened around Alara's. No one gets to walk away from you anymore. You shouldn't have risked that, Alara said. The alpha blood ritual. What if my body had rejected it completely? Then I would have found another way. Kale took her hand carefully as though she might break. I told you I wouldn't let them hurt you. I meant it. Alara's throat tightened. I need to tell you something. Rest first. We can talk when you're stronger. No, now. She struggled to sit up, and Kyle quickly arranged pillows behind her back. When she was settled, Alara took a breath and said the words she had been avoiding for weeks. I love you. Kyle went completely still. What? I love you. Not because of some bond I can't feel. Not because you're the king and I'm supposed to. Her voice wavered, but she pushed forward. I love you because you're kind to your servants and terrible at seasoning stew. And you risked your own life to save mine repeatedly. I love you because you've never once made me feel broken or less than whole. She met his eyes. And I choose you, Kale Shadowcrest. Bond or no bond, I choose you. For a long moment, Kale said nothing. Then he leaned forward and kissed her forehead with such tenderness that Alara's eyes burned. When he pulled back, his expression was raw. I've spent my entire life being chosen for what I am. Alphaking, powerful bloodline, useful alliance. You are the first person who has ever chosen me for who I am. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Your choice means more than any bond fate could have given me. Alara kissed him then, properly, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not the bond, not yet, but something just as important, the beginning of healing. 2 days later, when Alara was strong enough to sit up without assistance, Corvin brought news that Alpha Darius had called an emergency council session. Kale tried to refuse, insisting Alara needed rest, but she overruled him. If this is about me, I should be there. The great hall was already full when they arrived. Alpha Darius stood at the center with 6 other Alpha nobles, including Lady Morgana. They all wore formal attire and expressions of grim determination. Your Majesty, Darius began without preamble, we have come to petition the crown regarding the matter of succession and Luna. Kale's voice dropped to a dangerous register. You presume much, Alpha Darius. We act out of duty to the realm. Morgana stepped forward. Her copper hair gleamed in the torchlight. Lady Alara is a gracious woman, and we bear her no personal ill will. But the fact remains that she cannot fulfill the traditional duties of Luna. A block bond is functionally no bond at all. The pack needs a queen who can truly sense and serve her people. The pack has a queen, Kale said flatly. Then prove it. Morgana's smile was sharp. Let Lady Alara demonstrate her fitness. If she truly believes she can serve as Luna, despite her limitation, let her defend that claim in formal challenge. A hush fell that was heavier than any insult. Formal challenge. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Corvin stepped forward, his voice pitched low. By the old charter, a challenge issued for the right of Luna in open court cannot be refused by decree, not without declaring the claimant illegitimate. And if we do that without proof, we hand the dissenters a banner. The council will demand the yard. The border lords will choose sides. It becomes politics with blood on it. Alara felt Lyra tense behind her. Formal challenge meant ritual combat. Alara was barely healed and had only weeks of real training. Morgana was a powerful alpha with decades of combat experience. It would be slaughter. Absolutely not, Kael said. I will not. I accept. Alara's voice rang clear across the hall. Every head turned toward her. I accept Lady Morgana's challenge. Kael rounded on her. You cannot be serious. I am, Alara stepped forward, addressing the assembled nobles directly. Lady Morgana questions my fitness to serve as Luna. Very well, let me prove my worth in the old way. If I prevail, all objections to my place at His Majesty's side will be withdrawn. If I fall, the throne will be free to choose another. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Morgana's smile widened. How noble and foolish, but I accept your terms. Tomorrow at noon in the training yard, witnessed by all. Alara met her gaze steadily, saw the certainty of victory in those jade eyes, and felt something cold and resolute settle in her chest. She would not go quietly into that darkness, not again. Tomorrow she would fight. The night before the challenge, Alara could not sleep. She stood at her window watching moonlight silver the training yard below. Tomorrow, that yard would fill with people come to watch her die. Or worse, watch her break, watch her yield, watch her prove that every cruel thing whispered about her in corridors and over wine was true. Defective, inadequate, unworthy. A knock at the door broke through her spiral of dark thoughts. Lyra entered without waiting for permission, followed by Kael. The warrior carried an armload of leather padding. The king carried an expression that looked like it was carved from stone and worry. We have until dawn, Lyra said, dropping the padding on a chair. That's not enough time to make you a match for Morgana's strength, but it's enough to teach you how to survive. They moved to the sitting room. Lyra demonstrated holds and breaks, pressure points, and weaknesses. How to use momentum against a larger opponent. How to fall without staying down. How to endure pain and keep moving. Kael watched from the doorway, his hands curled into fists. After an hour, Lyra stepped back. You can't win on strength. You have to fight smarter. Make her angry. Make her overconfident. Then make her pay for it. And if that doesn't work, then you get back up, again and again, until she realizes you won't break. Lyra's eyes were fierce. You've survived worse than Morgana Ashford. Remember that. After Lyra left, Kael remained. He crossed the room slowly and sat beside Alara on the floor where she had collapsed, exhausted. You shouldn't have accepted, he said quietly. I had no choice. You heard Corvin. Refusing it would have started a war. Better a war than watching you. He stopped, couldn't finish the sentence. Alara turned to look at him, really look at him. This man who had pulled her from fire, who had investigated her innocence when it would have been easier to let her burn, who had defended her against his own court, who had given her his blood even knowing her body might reject it and kill them both. I'm not going into that yard to die, she said. I'm going to fight, and maybe I'll lose, but I'll lose on my feet, choosing my own fate. That's more than I had in that tower. Kael reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused from sword work. I believe in you. even if you don't believe in yourself yet. Why? The question came out small, broken. Everyone else sees exactly what I am. Broken, limited, a liability to the crown. Why can't you? Because I see what you've become since leaving that tower. Kael's thumb traced circles on her wrist. You've learned politics and combat. You've stood before the council and defended your worth with words that made Alpha nobles nod in agreement. You've endured assassination attempts and sabotage and a court that wants you to fail. And you're still here, still fighting. That's not broken, Alara. That's steel being forged. Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back. What if the steel breaks tomorrow? Then I'll be there to catch you. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it hurt. But you won't break. I've seen you. I know what you're made of. Tomorrow, everyone else will see it too. He left her then, because staying would have been improper, would have given the court more ammunition, would have suggested that the king doubted his mate's ability to stand alone. But his faith remained after he was gone, warming something cold and frightened inside Alara's chest. She did not sleep, but she stopped being afraid. Dawn came too quickly and not quickly enough. Lyra helped Alara dress in borrowed combat leathers, soft enough to move in, thick enough to offer minimal protection. The armor was too big, made for someone broader through the shoulders. Alara looked like a child playing warrior. Ignore how it looks, Lyra said, cinching the straps tighter. Focus on how it feels. Can you move? Alara tested her range of motion. Her ribs were still tender from the hunting accident, but the alpha blood had done its work. She could breathe without pain, could twist and bend without her body screaming betrayal. I can move. Then you can fight. They made their way down to the training yard as the sun climbed higher. The yard had transformed overnight. Raked sand marked the combat circle. Benches rose in tiers around the perimeter, already filling with nobles in their finest clothes. This was entertainment for them. Spectacle. A morning's diversion. Kael stood on the royal platform with Corvin at his side. He wore ceremonial armor that caught the light. He looked every inch a king. Remote and powerful and absolutely untouchable. But when his eyes found Alara across the yard, she saw the fear he was hiding from everyone else. Morgana arrived like a queen herself. She wore combat leathers dyed deep crimson, tailored to showcase her height and strength. Her copper hair was braided back from her face in an intricate crown. She moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had never doubted her place in the world. She was beautiful, powerful, everything a Luna should be. The officiator, an elderly beta who had overseen formal challenges for 40 years, stepped into the circle. His voice carried across the yard without effort. This is formal combat for the right of Luna. The challenge ends when one combatant yields or is rendered unable to continue. Death is not required, but is permitted. Do both parties understand and accept these terms? I do, Morgana said. Her voice was clear. Certain. I do, Alara echoed. Her voice was steady. That surprised her. Then begin. Morgana did not waste time with posturing. She came in fast and brutal, her first strike aimed at Alara's still healing ribs. The blow would have landed if Alara had not remembered Lyra's training. Dodge, don't block. Save your strength. Alara rolled away, coming up in a defensive crouch. Fast, Morgana acknowledged. Lyra taught you well, but speed won't save you. She attacked again, a combination of strikes that drove Alara backward across the yard. Alara blocked what she could and dodged the rest. But she was already tiring. Morgana was relentless, giving no opportunity to counter, no chance to breathe. A heavy blow caught Alara across the jaw and sent her sprawling. Blood filled her mouth. The crowd gasped. Alara spat red and forced herself upright. The sand was hot beneath her palms. The sun was too bright. Her vision swam. Stay down, Morgana advised. You've proven your courage. No one will think less of you for yielding. Alara glanced at Kael. He gripped the edge of the platform so hard the wood cracked. But he was not looking at her with pity or disappointment. He was looking at her with absolute faith. She could feel it across the distance. That certainty. That belief. No, Alara said. I'm not finished. She came at Morgana differently this time, using the techniques Lyra had drilled into her about fighting larger opponents. Stay close. Disrupt their balance. Use their strength against them. It almost worked. Alara got inside Morgana's guard and landed a solid strike to her ribs that made the alpha grunt. But Morgana recovered fast. Caught Alara's wrist and twisted hard. Alara felt bones grind, screamed. Morgana swept her legs out. Alara went down again, landing hard on her back with Morgana's knee on her chest. Yield, Morgana demanded. Alara could barely breathe with the weight pressing down. Her vision grayed at the edges. This was it. She had fought and lost, just as everyone expected. Except she had not come this far to fail now. She had survived her brother's betrayal, a burning tower, assassins in the dark, a fever that should have killed her. She had chosen Kale not because fate demanded it, but because he was worth choosing, and she would be damned if she let Morgana take that choice away. No. The word came out as a gasp. I yield to no one. Power exploded through Alara's chest. The mate bond, buried and blocked for 24 years, tore through every barrier her trauma had constructed. It was not gentle. It was wildfire and lightning, consuming and transforming everything it touched. Alara felt Kyle through the bond, suddenly and completely, his absolute faith in her, his bone-deep love that had never wavered, his certainty that she was worthy, valuable, strong. And with that connection came strength, not borrowed or forced, but hers. The bond was not giving her power. It was showing her the power she had always possessed but never accessed. The strength she had denied herself because her father had taught her she was broken. But she was not broken. She had never been broken. She had only been afraid. Alara grabbed Morgana's wrist and twisted, using leverage instead of strength. The larger woman lost her balance and rolled sideways. They both came to their feet. Morgana's eyes had widened with shock. You feel it now, the bond. I feel everything, Alara replied. The fight changed. Alara moved faster now, hit harder. Anticipated attacks before they came because she could feel Kael's military instincts flowing through their connection. She was still smaller and less experienced, but she had something Morgana did not have. A mate whose strength amplified her own. They circled each other, trading blows that would have ended lesser fighters. The crowd was silent now, watching something they had not expected. A defective Omega holding her ground against one of the most powerful alphas in the Northern Territories. More than holding, winning. Morgana was breathing hard. Sweat darkened her crimson leathers. She had expected an easy victory, a quick yield. This prolonged battle was draining her in ways she had not prepared for. The final blow came almost elegantly. Morgana overextended on a strike meant to finish things, meant to drive Alara into the sand and end this humiliation. But Alara saw it coming through the bond, felt Kael's tactical mind analyzing the opening. She slipped inside Morgana's guard and drove her elbow into the pressure point just below the ribs. The same spot Lyra had shown her last night. Morgana went down, gasping, unable to catch her breath. Alara stood over her, breathing hard but standing. Yield. Morgana looked up with hatred and grudging respect warring in her jade eyes. For a long moment she did not speak, pride fighting with survival. Then quietly, I yield. The training yard erupted in noise, some cheering, some protesting, all stunned. The officiator raised his hand for silence. The challenge is concluded. Lady Alara has prevailed. By the old laws, Lady Morgana must accept exile from Ironmore Keep in all territories under King Kael's rule. She has until sunset to depart. Kyle was across the yard before Alara registered him moving. He swept her into his arms and kissed her with such passion that the crowd's noise shifted. Surprised laughter, good-natured approval. This was a king who loved his queen, who was not ashamed to show it. When he finally pulled back, his amber eyes were wet. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. Alara pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the bond for the first time. I can feel you, your heart, your emotions, everything. She laughed, giddy with relief and joy and the sheer impossibility of still being alive. You're stuck with me now. The bond won't let you escape. I never wanted to escape. Kael kissed her again, softer this time. I just wanted you to choose me. I chose you before the bond woke up. This just makes it official. Behind them, Morgana had risen to her feet. Guards moved to escort her from the yard, but she held up a hand, stopping them. She walked to where Alara and Kael stood. Up close, her eyes were not filled with hatred, just exhaustion, resignation, something that might have been sadness. I need you to know something, Morgana said quietly. Only the three of them could hear. Before you make me into a villain in your story. Kael tensed. Morgana, 5 years ago, you and I were betrothed, an alliance between our families. Political, yes, but I believed we would grow to care for each other. She looked at Kael with something raw in her expression. Then you refused to complete the bond. Said you would wait for your true mate. That alliance was worth nothing compared to fate. She turned to Alara. I have spent 5 years watching him rule alone, waiting, hoping he might change his mind. That practical partnership might be enough. Her smile was bitter. Then you appeared, a nobody from nowhere, defective, limited, everything a Luna should not be. And he looked at you the way he never looked at me. So you tried to have me killed, Alara said quietly. Morgana shook her head. I tried to have you discredited, undermined, made so unsuitable that even a mate bond could not overcome political reality. The assassination attempt was not my order. Someone else is playing games in this court. Someone who wants chaos. She stepped back. You won fairly. I accept exile. But watch your back, Lady Luna. Whatever game is being played, it is not finished. She left then, escorted by guards, walking away from the only home she had known with her head high and her pride intact. Alara watched her go and felt something complicated. Not quite pity, not quite sympathy, but understanding perhaps. Morgana had loved and lost, had schemed to reclaim what she believed was hers. In another story, she might have been the hero. Do you believe her? Kale asked quietly. About the assassination attempt? I don't know, but Corvin should investigate. Alara leaned against him, suddenly exhausted. Tomorrow. Right now, I just want to stand here and feel the bond humming between us. Kale wrapped his arms around her. The crowd had dispersed. The yard was emptying, but they stood together in the center of the combat circle, exactly where Alara had proven her worth. What does it feel like? Kale asked. The bond, from your side. Alara closed her eyes, focused on the golden thread connecting her heart to his. Like finding something I did not know I was missing. Like being warm after a lifetime of cold. Like home. She opened her eyes and looked up at him. Like choosing you every day for the rest of my life will be the easiest thing I have ever done. The ritual of union took place that evening. There was no time for elaborate ceremony, but neither Alara nor Kyle wanted one anyway. This was not about spectacle. This was about binding their lives together in the eyes of pack law and old magic. They stood in the great hall before the assembled court, their hands bound together with silk cord that glowed with enchantment. Corvin stood before them in his role as chief advisor and keeper of traditions. The hall was silent. Every shifter present could see the mate bond now. It had blazed to life during the challenge. Golden threads visible to those with eyes to see them, weaving between Alara and Kale, stronger than any bond Corvin had witnessed in decades. Do you, Kale Shadowcrest, Alphaking of the Northern Territories, Corvin began, his voice carrying ancient weight, accept Alara Winters as your mate, your Luna, your queen? To stand beside you in all things until death claims you? I do. Kale's eyes never left Alara's face. Do you, Alara Winters, accept Kale Shadowcrest as your mate, your alpha, your king? To stand beside him in all things until death claims you? I do. Alara meant it with every fiber of her being. Then by the old laws and the new, I declare you bound. What fate has joined, let no one divide. The silk cord dissolved in golden light. The mate bond blazed brighter. Alara felt it settle into her bones, permanent, unbreakable. Hers. The hall erupted in genuine celebration this time. Whatever doubts the court had harbored about Alara's suitability, the bond itself was undeniable. She had proven her worth in combat, had woken a bond that healers confirmed was powerful and true. She was Luna now, not by manipulation or political maneuvering, by right of challenge and choice. That night, in the royal chambers that were now truly hers, Alara and Kyle stood at the window looking out over Ironmore Keep. Tell me something, Kyle said, his arm around her waist. In the tower, when you were chained and waiting to die, what did you think about? Alara was quiet for a long moment. My father's words, that I would never be worthy of love, that I was broken and defective and would die alone. She turned to look at him. I believed him, right up until you broke through that door. And now? Now I know he was wrong. I was always worthy. I just needed to believe it myself. She placed her hand over his heart. The bond was there all along, buried under years of being told I was inadequate, under guilt about my mother's death, under walls I built to protect myself from more disappointment. What changed? Kale's voice was soft. What finally broke through those walls? You, Alara said simply, choosing me when you had every political reason not to, defending me when it would have been easier to find another mate, believing in me when I could not believe in myself. She smiled, and realizing that I loved you before the bond woke, that my choice came first. That made all the difference. Kale kissed her then, not with the passion of the training yard or the ceremony, but with tenderness that promised forever. I've waited my whole life to feel whole, Alara whispered against his lips. I don't want to wait anymore. What followed was private, sacred, theirs alone. But when dawn came, Alara woke in Kael's arms feeling more complete than she had ever imagined possible. The bond hummed between them, warm and golden and absolutely certain. She was home. 6 months passed like a dream made real. Alara stood in the healing clinic she had established in Ironmore's lower city. The building had once been a warehouse. Now it held clean cots and supplies and healers who treated common wolves who could not afford private care. A young mother sat before her, cradling a feverish child. Alara prepared a tincture of willow bark and elderflower with the same hands that had once ground herbs in Frostmere's still room. But now she worked in light and purpose instead of shadow and shame. 3 times a day until the fever breaks, she explained, showing the mother how to measure the dose. If it worsens, come back immediately. The mother took the bottle with tears in her eyes. Thank you, Your Majesty. You don't need to thank me. This is what Luna does. Alara smiled. Takes care of her people. All of them. After the mother left, Lyra appeared in the doorway. The last patient is here. A young Omega. Says she cannot feel mate bonds. Alara's heart clenched. Show her in. The girl was perhaps 16, slender and frightened. She reminded Alara of herself at that age. Your Majesty, the girl whispered, the healers in my village say I am defective, that I will never find a mate. Alara took the girl's hands gently. What's your name? Mira. Mira, listen carefully. Alara waited until the girl looked up. You are not defective. You are not worthless. The inability to feel a bond right now does not mean you are broken. It means you might be hurt, or afraid, or protecting yourself. But I spent 24 years believing I was inadequate because I could not feel what others felt. Alara squeezed her hands. The bond was there all along, buried under trauma, under walls I had built to survive. When I was ready, when I chose to believe I was worthy, it woke. What if I'm actually broken? Then you will still be valuable, still worthy, still capable of love and purpose. Alara pulled her to her feet. Your worth is not determined by who fate decides you should love. It is determined by who you choose to become. Mira left with herbs and hope. That evening, Alara sat with Kael in their chambers. Snow fell beyond the windows. The bond hummed warm between them. A young Omega came to the clinic today, Alara said. She cannot feel bonds. I told her what you told me. That she's not broken? That she gets to choose who she becomes. Alara turned to look at him. Do you ever regret it? Fighting when you could have walked away? Not even for a moment. She pressed her hand to his chest. That fight was the first time I truly chose myself, and it led me here. To you. To a life I never imagined. Kael pulled her closer. You built yourself into a queen. Not because I gave you a crown, but because you decided you were worthy of wearing one. They sat in comfortable silence. Then Alara spoke again. I want to expand the clinics. Establish them in every major city. Done. I want to reform challenge laws. Make it harder to trap people into combat. Also done. Kael kissed her temple. What else? Alara laughed. You're supposed to make me argue. Why? You're Luna. I trust your judgment. He smiled. Besides, I like watching you change our world. Later in the darkness with the bond humming between them, Kael asked one final question. Do you ever think about your father? About what he said? Alara was quiet. Sometimes, but the words don't hurt anymore. He was wrong about everything. I was never defective, never unworthy, just hurt, and hurt can heal. Yes, Kael agreed softly. It can. In the years that followed, Alara Winters became legendary as the Luna who had proven that worth comes from within. She established clinics across the territories, reformed laws to protect the vulnerable, created opportunities for those society had deemed broken. And when young wolves asked how she became strong, she told them simply, I was born with a limitation, but I chose to see it as a challenge. I survived when others tried to destroy me. I fought when it would have been easier to yield. I loved when I believed I was unlovable. You are not defined by what you lack. You are defined by what you choose to become. Mourn in her healing clinic, a banner hung above the entrance. You are not broken. You are becoming. Those 5 words changed more lives than any crown ever could. Alara chose love. She chose herself. She chose to believe that even wounded things could become whole. And in the choosing, she became exactly who she was always meant to be.